coming off one of the most exciting Red Crest events they've probably had to date. Thought it'd be good to get some insight from the tournament, the Bass Pro Tour, the Red Crest, and get a guest on that I've kind of had my sights on for a while. Somebody that just has a lot of good, positive energy, a lot of great fishing knowledge. And tonight we're gonna talk with Mr. Jake Lawrence. What's going on, Jake?
Hey, how are you?
I'm ready to get inside the mind of a Bass Pro Tour rookie. How's that?
That is still a humbling sound for someone to even say that. It's been a lot of fun this year. Been a big learning curve as far as formats but my goodness, I'm fishing against and around the guys that I grew up idling and looking up to. So it's each day you kind of have to make sure and pinch yourself and kind of make sure this is real and this is actually happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So tonight, HellaBass Live as usual, presented by Arsenal Fishing and boosted by Powerhouse Lithium. And yeah, so the Brian says we look good, sound good. I feel like I'm guessing that's a curtain behind you, but it almost looks like a theatrical stage, like the curtain's going to draw and there's going to be like a dancing line behind you or something.
Well, I'll be honest. I had to go see the tax man today. It was that unfortunate day to go meet with the accountant, and so I had my wife kind of throw all this together, and I literally just walked into the room. I had one at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock this afternoon as well, and so we're just kind of rolling with whatever she put together here. It worked out pretty decent.
Definitely works pretty good. Yeah, that's one thing I think people underestimate, whether you do, if you treat your fishing at all like a business, whether it's a full-time thing or a side thing, or you do tournaments or content, like tax prep is no easy feat for that. The amount of expenses and all the 1099s and the ones you don't get, and you should still report this, and it's a lot.
It is. I tell you, it's certainly by no means is this a complaint, but it is obviously, and without question, I'm sure most people would agree, like the most dreaded part of this job. There are a lot of things or a few things that are not all that fun. But this is absolutely at the top of that list. But we survive it every year. We'll get through it, and then we don't have to think about it for about 11 more months.
Yeah. And the thing is, for fishing, it happens at like the worst time. Like,
It does. It does.
I mean,
And
this is the time where like tournaments are in full swing, or if you're up north where I am, you're gearing up and you are chomping at the bit, or like, yeah, there's a lot of things going on.
yeah, and every year I say, I'm going to do this like quarterly, like sit down and break my last quarter down, and it's the same thing. I get so busy fishing and doing things with the kids and all that. It's hard to find time until it's the time. So we finally crunched everything in, and thanks to my wife, she spent a ton of time while I was actually at Red Crest preparing for it and getting us ready. So I think we survived this year. We'll find out soon enough.
Tom, I'm excited to have Jake on. Bo says he's a stick. Darius says he's the man at Kentucky Lake. So I guess maybe we'll start there. Like, there's a Toyota going on Kentucky Lake, and there's no Jake Lawrence fishing it. Is that the tax man's fault, or what's
Well, that's an easy excuse. It's kind of a multifaceted decision. It was a hard decision, and now that I'm sitting here, it's kind of a hard one. Like I wished I was fishing, but my main decision in that was I wanted to stay focused for Red Crest. I fished an event, a Toyota at Grand Lake prior to last year's Invitational, and it was we had a great tournament. I think we finished second in that event. But it was like the entire week I felt like I was on Kentucky Lake, like mentally. I really wasn't even concerned with that Toyota, and I did not want that same feeling for Red Crest. I think with the water conditions and kind of the way things played out, no practice would have been just as well as 2 or 3 weeks of practice. So I'm really wishing that I would have gotten in it, and I've gotten a day or two of rest now, and feeling pretty good. So, but it was, it looks to be really strong weights, kind of what I expected. The scope and stuff's not playing as much as what it normally does this time of year with a spawning smallmouth. And so it would have been a really fun event. I may have to kind of sneak out there one afternoon and maybe not in the event itself, but just kind of go get a little piece of that flipping and frog and bite.
Yeah. So or is it already day 2?
It is. It is. It's day two. So I'm not exactly sure why, but several of the Toyotas this year are a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Obviously, it's a scheduling thing, but immediately following Red Crest, I'm not sure why they did that. So
It's an old familiar face at the top of the.
absolutely.
Yeah, I haven't heard his name in a while, but there was, I would say, you've kind of had your reign of terror on Kentucky Lake, but rewind, I don't know, 8-10 years ago, and
Yep.
that was Sam Lashley's
That
period
was
where he
Sam.
was running the show. Drew
Absolutely.
Gill made
Yeah.
it
I
down
mean,
there.
there's a ton of locals in there. Obviously Drew Gill, not necessarily local, but spent quite a bit of time here. It's really actually a little more. It looks like day two is a little more of a mix of kind of scopers and old school. Flipping, I'm sure, is probably what Sam's doing, and I would imagine the vast majority of the guys. I tell you, the hardest part about that tournament is if those fish were up there, but it was not the right caliber in those bushes, it would be really hard for me to not just completely kamikaze the entire event and just go flip and have a big time and catch as many as I could. After the 2010 and 11 floods that we had here on Kentucky Lake and really the whole how about that? He's got a smallmouth. He didn't catch them
I was
all
looking, there's a
flipping
lot of mixed
bushes.
bags here.
Yeah. But they really don't allow the lake to get anywhere close to being, higher above summer pool unless it is absolutely necessary, like the situation we have, now with the Ohio and Mississippi so high. So it's kind of a rare thing. When I was a kid, several years ago, it seemed like it would happen 2, 3, maybe even 4 times a year. We could get a high lake, and I think another part of it is, our lake is silting in the backs of these bays where a lot of these button ball bushes are, and so it's just kind of. I'm finally getting old enough now that unfortunately I'm seeing that long-term change with different bodies of water, and it's kind of fascinating, but a little disheartening at the same time. I'm not as young as what a lot of guys think I am, and it's kind of an interesting thing to kind of all come full circle and you're thinking. And I remember my grandparents talking about how fast the days will go by, and man, it's so crazy. Like, how's it already April? I feel like the new year was a few weeks ago. So they were not kidding when they said that. But it's been a lot of fun, and Kentucky Lake's really coming back. It's we've had a really healthy, strong smallmouth population rebound over the last, say, 3 or 4 years, and we've got a strong upbringing or juvenile class of largemouth in the lake as well, and a handful of kind of old dinosaurs that are hanging on. So I really like the look of the lake, and it seems to be really healthy. So I think we've got good things to come.
So with the more stable water, do we not get the yellow flower bite as much, or is that still a thing?
Yeah, it's not as often. Again, there's not a ton of water in it, and like now, if you already knew where a lot of the yellow tops were, I'm sure you could be catching them on them right now. But it's almost gotten so high you're not going to see them at this point. So it's just kind of a different lake now after the 2010-11 flood. Like I say, they don't let it. Like, if there is the slightest chance of a pretty healthy rain, they'll go ahead and draw it a foot or two low just in preparation for it. So we get it seems like every couple years now, but certainly not anything like what we used to.
That's cool. Absolutely. So speaking of the Red Crest, right? That happened last week, ended on Sunday. That was your first Red Crest, right?
It was.
So made your and now you qualify that based on one of your wins last year, right? In the
The
Invitational.
Eufaula win and Eufaula, Alabama win on the
Yep.
Invitationals.
So
Absolutely.
And then I tuned into a decent amount of the Bass Pro coverage or for the Red Crest this year. I think they did a good job. I think you guys hit it great on Guntersville. Like,
Yep.
the type of fishing, the fish were biting. The weather was pretty good. Like, it was a there was a lot of fish catches and a lot of quality fish catches in a lot of different ways for people to watch and spectate.
Yeah, that's that seems to be what really is important now when we're talking about the viewership or the entertainment level of kind of what we're doing out there is really, we're all so good now, and we're also kind of level. The field is kind of leveled as far as knowledge base. Again, much like this podcast and excuse me, many others YouTube videos. There's just so many resources that are available now. We all tend to kind of find the same things. Like whatever is the best thing on that lake, there's going to be a dozen to 20 guys that are going to find that. And inevitably that kind of ends up being what most of the coverage is about, whether it's forward facing or Murray, we're all dead sticking little worms under docks. Like we all kind of end up coming to the same conclusion. In Guntersville, much as we all anticipated, was not that case. There was a lot of diversity between, fishermen and kind of how we were going about it. There were a ton of different fish, or a ton of fish in different stages. So it really made it an interesting and diverse tournament to kind of watch and thus much more enjoyable. I don't get me wrong. I obviously like forward facing events. It's there's always a science behind, getting the majority of those fish to commit and to bite and cover enough water. Like there's a whole separate strategy and kind of game plan that goes into that. But it's fun to see kind of one of these tournaments where you can really generate a lot of bites, fishing and kind of a traditional manner, whatever you want to call it. So it was a good mix. The pollen at Guntersville last week was very, very prevalent, as it is I'm sure in most of the Southeast. We always deal with this usually about the last week of March through potentially even sometimes the first week of May. Kind of really the whole month of April, we're going to kind of have to deal with this, and it really kept a lot of the forward facing fish somewhat protected. It was really hard to see your bait, and I had one little area that the pollen was not terribly bad. It was really kind of a prevailing southerly wind, and this bait was facing south, so it was like pushing all the pollen kind of out into the river and away from the back third of that bay. And so I was able to, kind of capitalize on that. And I had all that entire area back there to myself. And it really kind of helped me, push through the event. But I honestly never had any real strong, forward facing periods. I don't know, I didn't break it down, but I probably caught well more in my fishing periods than I ever did in my scope periods. I was fortunate. It seemed like I would catch one or two really good ones every day scoping, whereas fishing, I was primarily just the way I was fishing kind of led me to catch a lot of bucks. And I am not much of a dragger, like as bad as I want to, as much as I love feeling, one thump a worm or whatever it may be. I just, especially in this format, have not found a way to kind of calm myself down and let a bite come to me. Like and even well before this format, I've always kind of been that way. I've always, fished very fast and tried to cover as much water as I could. Obviously, you've got to stay efficient doing it, but man, it is crazy trying to sit there and drag and you're listening to Score Tracker update just one after another. And so I really decided well before this tournament started that if at all possible, I was not going to drag around and throw with those little light spots with a wacky rig. And it ended up, playing much more heavily than what I expected. But it's just not my game. And when you're fishing against some of the best in the world, you've got to kind of roll with what you're comfortable with and what you're confident in. And I did a good job of that. I just never, like this entire season has kind of been really much of the same. We've had a tremendous start to the season, zero complaints, but it's kind of been mediocre, like fishing wise. I mean, I end up making the best of what I have, but like I'm not in 4 events yet this year thought that I was really even on the winning group of fish or the winning pattern. I find myself every championship day, like I go out with a fresh start and cover a lot of new water and try to find that winning group once I make it to that final day. It just has not materialized, but I know, I'm obviously gaining confidence, and I know it's a numbers deal. You continue to make those championship rounds, and one of these days it will, the stars will align, and we'll fall in right where we need to. So really had a fun
Yeah,
start to it.
absolutely. It's an interesting question. Lincoln G asks, is there any time the pollen gives you an advantage, or is it all drawback with pollen?
I mean, you could look at it in this event. I was able to again find that little area that the pollen was not terrible. I could see my bait, call it like 85% of the time. There were several fish that I caught on a minnow that was like by pure instinct this week. Like I just thrown a minnow enough to now to, like, it's almost kind of muscle memory about how far that bait is, and about where it needs to be, and you kind of be working it along blind, and all of a sudden you see that light bulb and he'd come up. You knew your minnow was somewhere up above him and he's coming at it. So I would say to some degree, if you can find an area that's got a healthy population of fish, and the pollen for whatever reason, is not terrible in that area, it can definitely play to your advantage. Much like this event, there was not a ton of forward facing stuff. It was by far not the prevalent kind of pattern and way to catch them. And so if you had something really special, and it did kind of seem to fizzle on me in practice, the one day that I was doing that, I caught them really well. Again, I had forward all day, but I found several areas that I felt like I could get multiple bites in, and none of that really played a whole lot. Like I say, I had that one area there in that big bay, and I kind of made the most of it, and then would run as far up the river as, not quite as far as DC and Schrader, but I was way up there north of Goose Pond, kind of in the river portion, Mud Creek, and kind of all those little creeks and backwaters up there.
Cool. Yeah. And, like, just to set the stage here, I guess you've been fishing at a national stage more in the last handful of years. I guess we'll call it the front-facing Sonar era. But I don't want people to get the wrong idea. Jake Lawrence was catching them and winning a lot of money before front-facing Sonar. So, like, I think guys like Darius and other guys around Kentucky Lake know plenty. So I just
Yeah,
you
and
can
I
catch them.
appreciate that. It's
Yeah.
I was very, very fortunate. Have been very fortunate my entire life. Everything's just kind of, absolutely, I've worked hard and I've put my time in, but things out of my control have really fallen into place. Like multiple different things for me to be where I am and to be sitting here now on this podcast. And one of those was simply just my age and kind of the unique place where I grew up for 20, call it 23 or 4 years. I grew up fishing. We didn't even know live scope existed. It didn't exist back then. And you had to find them, by fishing, or, again, 2008 or 9, the side imaging came out. Obviously I kind of got on the forefront of it. And, I've stayed up with technology, but again, thank you. I feel very fortunate that I grew up in a time where I had to learn to fish, and I'm really confident doing that. But I'm also kind of still young enough to be pretty proficient with forward, and I've spent a lot of time with it. And a lot of people have that question of kind of where I came from, and just kind of came out of nowhere. But what I did for 7, 8, 9 years here is guide full time. I would almost kind of set this up as, it sounds goofy and I'm a little bit embarrassed to even say this, but like I wanted to create a challenge for myself in the sense that I got really tired of fishing one lake. Like it was pretty easy to pattern them after you're out there for a couple days. Things always change, but like if you've been there the last 30 days, the changes are fairly minuscule to you. It's pretty easy to keep track. And so I started this kind of regimen of, I would book 2 to 5 days on a particular body of water, usually, somewhere in my area, Tennessee, North Alabama, Mississippi. And I would spend 2 to 4 days on that body of water, and I might come home for a day or two. Then I would have, several more days booked on a different body of water. So over time, it really helped me to kind of refine my ability to find them. I've got somebody standing right over my shoulder expecting me to get a bite at any moment. And I guess I can admit this now, but like a lot of those guys didn't know that's what I was doing, but it was just the way that it kept me entertained. And don't get me wrong, I worked hard at it. And if we didn't have a day that I thought we needed to, I'd certainly be more than fair, but it was the only way that I could stay interested in it and it be a challenge to me. And it really honed my skills. Like it made me, I fished a tournament 250 days a year, again, just kind of with myself and you know, my partner there for the day. But it was something that I didn't feel comfortable guiding 5 or 6 sometimes 7 days a week and then fishing a tournament. And yeah, I feel like I'm leaving somebody out there. Either I'm hurting myself or I'm hurting my client, and I don't really want to do either. So I really kind of took a hiatus there. I don't know, 4 or 5 years from big tournaments. I might fish a little something here and there, but you know, again, very fortunate in 2018, won a Toyota here prior to live scope and all that. We caught them offshore and had a big time. Almost nearly broke the 3-day weight record, which has now since been beat like a dozen times. But it was certainly a cool feat for me. Got really close to it, and again, just kind of stayed on the guiding grind. And I guess it was 2 or 3 years ago, 4 years ago now, maybe, I met Monty McWilliams and the whole crew there at Mallard Estates, and really kind of took me under their wing. We started fishing, you know, got to be really big buddies, started fishing a lot of local tournaments, and you know, it just kind of evolved from there to the point that like he all but kicked me out and said, "You're doing it. You're just like, you got to go. This is your opportunity." And cannot thank that crew enough for being kind of that support system and that backbone for me to kind of fall back on if need be, because I absolutely would not be where I am, you know, without those guys. And it's really special, all these moments that continue to happen. It's like I can't help but think back of all those conversations that the two of us, you know, and maybe even a handful of us would have on the back porch, of like them trying to talk me into this and I'm trying to talk myself out. Of course, I've got a family and, you know, 2 kids, and this is certainly not the easiest. It's very glamorous. It's very awesome, but it's not the easiest way to make a living. So I knew it was a bit of a gamble, and it really kind of took those guys to really push me quite aggressively. And can't thank those guys enough. Very fortunate that I have been kind of put in the place that I've been, right time, right place, and certainly made a heck of a lot of friends along the way.
Yeah, that's cool. Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like, is there a connection to the bait man and Monty McWilliams?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
I feel like
Yep.
I've talked to him on his chat before, so like it was all coming
Absolutely.
full circle here.
I need to call back. He called me, I think, during Red Crest practice, or I'm glad you said that. I need to call him. He's we've been playing phone tag for like several months now. So
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think not to gloss over Red Crest before we get too far. We're just kind of meandering around, but yeah, for those watching the coverage in the knockout round, you were kind of most of the morning. You were, you know, like you led early. I think you caught a couple of those key fish you talked about. You got some good bites in the morning, and then you kind of just hung and you slid down into that kind of like 5 to 8 range, and then all of a sudden you drip down to like the 9, 8, 9 spot for the last, I don't know, maybe hour. And you know, there was guys like I don't know, a couple guys making surges, Marks,
yep.
Jeff Sprague, a couple other guys, right, bobbing up and down. You guys were trading blows, and you actually fell out, right?
I did.
By it was only a couple ounces, but the minimal scoring fish was 2 pounds. Even though you were, I think, just a few
Correct.
ounces, though, it didn't matter. You couldn't catch 12-incher. You needed a 2-pounder.
Correct.
And I think you caught one with a minute.
Yeah, it was less than 3 minutes. It's all a bit of a blur. The kind of the last few minutes there, it was, you know, some guys were kind of so close friends, but they were like, "Oh man, you were really kind of out of it. You were, you know, you were really kind of giving up." And I'm like, "No, no, no. I was just giving my closing. Like it was literally so close to the end that, you know, I knew this was my last opportunity potentially on live, and I kind of wanted to give a closing to my week and how things were going, and literally in the process of that, I said, you know, something to the effect of, boy, what I would do for a 2-pounder. And I literally, when I say I made one more reel crank and an exact 2-pounder ate it, like you can't make that stuff up. And What a special moment. Like I have caught, goodness, I've caught thousands, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of 2-pounders. That particular 2-pounder will never ever leave my mind. That's just such a cool moment, and so cool. Like there's even some backstory there about how the camera guy's even still in the boat. It was really, really rough, and I made a really long run way up the river, and the camera guy was supposed to come, or the camera boat driver was supposed to come get him, and long story, he couldn't make it, and so it's really kind of cool to even, like, obviously I would have had that for myself. I had my, my GoPros for my YouTube channel and all that stuff going. Like we could have made a little bit of a production out of it, but that kind of drama, to keep him in the boat and to have that there, it was a really special moment. Again, it was just a little bitty 2-pounder, but boy, it meant the world to me right then.
And you were fishing around some emergent kind of, I guess, what's the
yeah,
weed
so
grass?
that was that was some kind of weird grass. I'm not even really sure what that stuff was. It was a real stringy, weird looking grass. There was some coontail that was mixed in, and that had been in practice in that little area. What I got several bites on. I got in there with like 35 minutes left in that last period, and just as you said, had just gotten knocked out. Or maybe I was in ninth still at this place, at this point. But when I pulled into this place, I immediately realized from, again, it's been like 4 days, 3 or 4 days since I'd been into this area. I'd kind of been trying to save it, and really didn't want to even go in there until the championship round. But the water had really come up, and the water had gotten really muddy. Like it was a weird, like there was one little alley, clean kind of alleyway through this matted vegetation on both sides, and the mud was like stuck right in that little alley, and that alleyway was exactly where I was getting bit in practice. And so I realized pretty quick, with only just a handful of minutes left, I'm like, if I'm going to get bit, it's going to be in one of these little holes. And that's kind of what y'all saw me. I was bouncing from hole to hole as fast as I could. And it seemed like about every other hole you would get to, you would catch one in, because that was the only kind of clean water left in that whole bay. And really kind of interesting to adapt and kind of make changes on the fly. That's really what I don't want to say what I pride myself on, but like that's what I get excited about. People always kind of give me a hard time. I'll catch a big one and not crack a smile about it. If it's something that I kind of anticipated or knew about, that was good. But I didn't learn anything from it. It's when I get excited and you see me really get fired up is when I make those game time decisions. I have that kind of whatever you want to call it, instinct, gut feeling, this is not right. We need to make something happen quick. And I don't know. I've always been good at that. There's no telling how many bass I've ran away from in my life and in my tournament career, probably more than I've ever found. But I just like to cover a bunch of water, and I'll always kind of go back to that same, I don't know if you call it theory, but every fisherman's had it, especially a tournament fisherman. Your best days, the days that you could have caught them, and I mean caught them, they always seem to be in practice or when it doesn't matter. And I'm a firm believer that's because you're, I guess kind of cliche Ike and Ellie, like you're fishing the moment. You're fishing that particular day, the conditions that are in front of you, and you tend to get more on the front side of a wave of fish. Whereas, you find a group of fish, maybe it's even the next day the tournament starts, the conditions are almost never the same 2 days in a row. You're always trying to make what happened yesterday, and it takes you a little while to kind of switch modes and get to wherever they are or whatever they're doing. And so I've really kind of kept that at the forefront. And like, I honestly probably could have finished a little bit higher. I don't know that I'm not saying by any means that I would have caught Wesley or DC, but I went and fished a tremendous amount of new water that last day. And with the water coming up, almost kind of hindsight 2020, I to some degree wish that I would have gone back and just reran everything that I'd been catching them on. I fished one little area in the I guess it'd be the last half of my second period, which I was fishing in, and It was an area that I didn't think had a lot left in it. And when that water came up 6 inches, the night prior to championship round, it really put a new wave up there. And I'm not sure that I couldn't have just reran what I had. But again, that's how I like to fish. I know that one of these times it's kind of a numbers deal. I keep playing the game that way. I'm going to land on that fresh, whether it's a new wave that's come in or it's a pattern that's developed since practice, because pretty well once practice is over, whatever is happening is kind of what everybody's been doing, and whatever wasn't or hasn't materialized yet usually doesn't really get messed with. Like, everybody kind of tends to stay the course throughout the event. So I'm always looking for kind of what's developing and what could come in the next couple of days.
Yeah, absolutely. So that 2 pounder, you were what, heavy line? Were you flipping or swimming
Yeah,
a
so
jig?
that was that was straight braid. I was throwing 30-pound Cigar Smackdown braid, and I had a little swim bait on there, a little Texas rig swim bait. I was generally in my fishing periods, I was targeting males. I obviously, if a big one, would have bit, I'd have sure been proud of her. But I was covering a lot of water with that little swim bait, and I could get those males if I reeled it over the top of their bed, and I was way back away from it. They would bite every time, one cast. Like, all you had to do was just hit the bed. And a lot of those fish, I was so far away, I didn't even see the bed, didn't see the light spot, certainly didn't know the fish was there. But you could cover so much water with that little swim bait that you were just inevitably going to come across some of those beds blind. Once I got in, and I know this probably wasn't the case for everyone, but it seemed like when I got inside of, call it 20 yards or 25 yards, like where you could really see that light spot well, and sometimes even see a fish in it, that was kind of the range where she wouldn't, or he wouldn't, really bite very well. Like, sometimes you could make them bite, but you had to work them, like even more so than a spawner, because a lot of them weren't like, I don't think it actually spawned and were like guarding, locked on. Like, a lot of times you'd pitch your wacky rig or a drop shot over there, and they would swim off and not come back until you'd reel your bait away from the bed. You could leave it in there 3 or 4 minutes, and he's somewhere around that bed watching, but he won't come back in it until that bait leaves. So it was kind of a strategic deal for me a decision for me to make, to cover water with that swim bait. And I also, in practice, I really went into this event thinking I was going to throw a swim jig almost the entire time, but it was funny the way the wind was blowing, kind of how my area set up. I couldn't throw that swim jig. There was a big giant bow in my line. Like, I couldn't fish it right. So I went with that swim bait, and it was a good decision. We were able to trigger enough of those males to bite, but I think I had maybe 2, what I would consider potential females. They could have just been big males, but that was kind of the decision I went with. And again, this format is, you need to generate as many bites as possible, and I am just not much of a dragger. So that was kind of the direction that I went with it.
So what was the little swim bait, and what was the setup? You Texas rigging a little bullet weight, or?
Yeah, a little bullet weight, 3/16 ounce bullet weight on her jungle weedless, the wide gap jungle hook, to a straight 30-pound smackdown. I had it on a Dobyns Champion XP 733. I tried it a little bit on the 734, but man, I just loved how that 733, it had enough backbone to it, but it still had some tip where I could just kind of flick it, and that thing would go forever, throwing it on that little Bates salty hundo. It was a really fun setup. Didn't fatigue me, making a ton of casts all day, and it was just a little 5-inch boot tail swim bait. Wasn't anything too much special with it, but it was just covering as much water. Those fish have seen a million chatterbaits, and in practice, it seemed like I could generate a handful of big bites on a buzzbait, but I never got a blow up on my buzzbait the entire week. I did have one blow up on my chatterbait. I casted it kind of on top of a mat and was going to just drag it off the edge, and I had a big one try to blow through the mat on it, but never got a really good buzzbait bite going in the tournament. Just kind of the conditions weren't really super conducive until that last day. And I don't know, I just couldn't make them bite it on the championship round. I was really surprised. I really thought that's what I was going to do. But
Bobby,
as always,
you find it.
the plan never comes out just the way you want it to. You just kind of got to adapt and make it happen with whatever they want. So
Yeah. I mean, obviously you were fishing. Bobby Lane got like 1 or 2 bites on a buzzbait in the morning, and he really
yeah,
like it almost sent him down the wrong path. I think he was like, it's happening, and then he tried to ride or die, and it didn't really work out.
yeah, yeah. And that's, that look, that's springtime fishing, especially when we get around the spawn like this. They're very temperamental. It's funny. You'll hit a little area or maybe it's a window of time where they will absolutely clobber, that little berserk buzzer and a ribbon on the back or I have even caught them, on a popper this time of year. Guntersville didn't really set up great for it, just with all the floating eelgrass. Your popper would always stay kind of fouled up, but there are times when those spawners will come up to the surface and really get aggressive over a topwater bait, and you can cover a fair amount of water with it. But when it's not happening, you just like cannot generate a bite doing it. It's like an on off thing. There's no kind of in between on it.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, they were. So Joe, back we were talking minnow. Bo's like, what's your go-to minnow?
Yeah, so obviously I've been throwing a number of different kind of JDM minnows for the last, call it, 4 years now. And super, super pumped. We have been working, Yamamoto and myself have been working, I don't know, 8 or 9 months on this kind of whole line of minnows that we're getting ready to release. And I finally had like not enough to even make it through the whole tournament, but I had enough to kind of get me going. Every night I'd kind of glue what I could back together, and we made them last as long as we could. But I caught them on it seemed like a 6-inch minnow was my deal this week. One, I felt like the fish, you would see a different level of aggression with it. For a lot of those fish, they would really kind of engage and get kind of involved with your minnow, and therefore you trigger a few more to bite. But probably the most important thing was just with the difficulty level of seeing your bait. That bigger bait was easier to see, and we've got some things with this particular minnow that I probably can't get super detailed, but there were some other things with this minnow that kind of helped me kind of see through the pollen. And even if it was just a split second kind of glance at my minnow, I knew where I was for that given moment and could kind of base myself the rest of the cast off of that. So it was a Yamamoto minnow until I ran out. And then we went with kind of some of the traditional JDM style minnows. And, I caught a few on a jerkbait in my scoping period. I caught a couple of them actually on a scrounger. Very similar to what DC was doing, below the dam. I honestly really surprised myself. I found a little school of them kind of staging on a kind of a clean-ish, call it cleaner spot in the grass. It still had some scattered grass in it, but it was kind of short and scattered around. And there was a really good group of them, maybe 50 or so there, but they were super smart. Like, you could catch them one time on a bait and then they wouldn't ever bite it the rest of the week. So the first morning I didn't even know they existed. I marked a couple little deals, a brush pile, and and that little hole, but I never stopped and looked in it or made a cast in it. So I didn't even know that they were there. But I rolled up about halfway through my school period on the first morning, and when I threw my minnow in there, again, I can't see my minnow. It's about 8 feet deep, but it had sunk roughly like 2 to 3 feet, and the entire bottom, all of it just came up at my minnow. And we caught, I don't know, 5 or 6 in a row, lost 2 or 3, and the entire school just completely shut down. And I knew going into the next day, it's a Tennessee River school. Like, that's what I do. That's kind of my deal. And so I was really fired up. I had a ton of rods laid out. And long story, I picked up that scrounger and made 8 or 9 consecutive, maybe 10 consecutive casts in there, and I wouldn't reel it more than 3 feet before one would eat it. And it's so funny how these schools are, especially these smart, some of the schools that get fished. I'm sure it was a very obvious place on the maps. I'm sure it gets fished a lot. But if you can ever keep them, like if you get these schools fired, if you get them what we call ignited and get them really excited, as fast as you can get a bait in there, you're going to catch one. But the moment that you give them a second to kind of realize something's up. This is, what's happened to Jimmy back there. It does not take long at all. I boat flipped one in, got a fish landing violation, took my 2-minute penalty, and I never caught another one on the scrounger the rest of the week. It was like the most daylight and dark. I mean, I wouldn't reel it this far before one would eat it. They were all fighting over it. Gave them 2 minutes to think about it, and not another one touched it the rest of the week. Like, not even the remaining couple of days of the event. Really interesting, and just kind of a testament to those fish on Guntersville. Like, those things they get fished worse or heavier, harder for than probably any other lake in the Southeast that I know of. And it's amazing. Like, you can pull up in an area and catch one every cast, and then you can go to a different area and you can't hardly make one bite. So it's like, it's a really unique place. And the eelgrass is kind of critical to keeping that population healthy and to where you can catch some. I really think some of those fish just kind of swim out there in no man's land and kind of hide out for a couple of days. They may not see a bait for a week and then slide up there on some place that looks right on the map that we're all fishing and get caught. But it's really weird. It's like, usually when you get to a lake, they either all want to bite or they all don't. Like, they're all pretty well in the same kind of mood. And Guntersville is not one of those places. You can get in areas that they act like they've never seen a bait. They have. And then you get in an area where this is a heavily pressured area.
Obviously, that's probably one time that the catch weight release works against you when you can't put 5 in the box. Like, they can quickly get back to that school and rat you out. So
exactly, smallmouth are the worst. Largemouth are not good. I tell you, it seems like smallmouth, it doesn't matter. Like, whether he jumps and comes off or you let him go by the boat and he swims back over there, they do something. I don't claim to know what it is, but there is something they release. Somehow they let everybody know, because I've seen it too many times. But largemouth, oftentimes, if you lose one and that fish that you've got on is like really close to the school, like the last one that I lost on top of that school, as soon as I hooked him, he came straight to the surface. So he was only about 6 feet above all the rest of them that were directly under him. So when he jumped and came off and started swimming back down, again, I don't know what happens and what they do, but every fish in that school knew something was up. There was no question. Now, if you're able to separate that fish away from the school, you lose him over there by the boat, sometimes that doesn't bother them. But if you lose them over there close, it's not good. Ill-advised for sure.
Let's see here. Yeah, JJ wants to know what's your favorite Dobyns Minnow shaking setups. And I should say, like, I will say, I feel like in general you tend to go lighter actions than what's conventional by a lot of people, from what I've seen.
I do. It's funny, and that's kind of the cool thing with all techniques. There's not a right or wrong. This is only, the only rod you can use, but everybody kind of builds their own cadence around this minnow fishing and kind of how they want to shake the rod and how they want the bait to act. And there's ways to make the bait roll by giving the line giving the bait slack with the line, as well as actually making the bait roll by popping the bait and getting that momentum to swing it on over. So it's really kind of a multifaceted way to do the same thing. But the rod that I've really grown to like here recently, we just came out with it. It's the 610. It's a Caden series 610 1 power. So I do like a little more of a whippy tip to it. The reason is the whippier the tip, the less that I actually have to shake, whether it be your elbow or your wrist. Again, everybody's kind of got their own way that they do it. But the lighter, and I hate to say the lighter the action, because these rods all still have a, fair amount of backbone. But it's more the last, call it 6 inches of the rod. The tip needs to be real whippy. I can very minutely shake, that rod, and the whippier tip will actually start to work kind of in tandem with me. And you can get in unison with it. It kind of sounds goofy for me to sit here and even talk about, but I'm wanting to, let me back up. So with a minnow, once a bass engages on this minnow, it is mission critical that the bait does not bobble in any way. So if you've got a good steady rock to it, and so you get excited and maybe you pull it a little too hard or you give it too much slack, the bait goes nose down or it jumps one way or the other. If it's inconsistent in almost any way, they really don't like it. Like your bite ratio goes down exponentially. And so to me, I want the most consistency, which in turn, I've kind of whittled it down to, I want to move my wrist or elbow, depending on how you shake, as little as possible. The smaller that I can shake it, the more consistent I'm going to be. It's all these real big, hard, heavy shakes with your stiffer rods that create this kind of inconsistency. So again, I'm not saying that's the only way to do it. That's just kind of my science behind it and what I like. But I really like that 610 1 power. We do have a 2 power. Again, it's a 6 foot 10 inch rod for your bigger, call it 6, 7, and 8 inch minnows. And we've got it in the ecstasy line, both the 1 and the 2 power. And rumor on the street is we're going to come out with a really light one for some of these really small minnows as well. So be sure to be looking for that here soon. Hopefully I'm going to get a couple prototypes here pretty quick, and we'll kind of see where we stand on it. But again, there's not a right or wrong way, but the most important thing, or as long as you get that good, consistent rolling action with your minnow. I know guys like Jacob Walker. I don't know exactly which Phoenix rod number it is. I'm a Dobyns guy, but it's way stiffer than what I'll use. And Jacob's a tremendous minnow fisherman. Won the Invitational at Champlain, caught every single one of them on a minnow. And so it's not that you can't do it with stiffer ones, but the lighter actions I definitely like.
Because weren't you even using the 710?
Yep. So 700 there for a while.
700.
Yep.
Yeah.
The 700 cadence series, and I still do. Again, on my really big minnows, I'll kind of mix that in with the 610 2 power, but trying to keep it kind of simple for everybody. I will say, if there is one spinning rod that I had to buy for all applications, like literally everything that I do with a spinning rod, it is that Cadence 700. You can throw a minnow on it. It's a little on the stiffer side, but it's still plenty. I've caught a ton of them on it. But it's also a great wacky rig rod. It's my Nico rig rod. Like, I can do about anything, small swim baits. I don't know that it's going to be a good, like a northern hair jig rod. I've got another Sierra model. It's actually a panfish trout rod that I've been throwing my hair jigs, like smallmouth hair jigs and spy baits on. I've had a lot of fun. It's not something that that you need to throw around heavy cover, but I think it's the 741 trout and panfish Sierra rod is absolutely the spy bait rod. Like, you will not lose them on it. Now you're going to take your time. Like, you can sit down and eat a sandwich while you fight him, but you won't pull those little number 8 and 10 hooks out like you do on those stiffer rods. So a little off topic, but something that I kind of played with on my northern swing last year. I can't wait to get back up there and do that again. But yeah, that 700 Caden is, in my opinion, the most versatile. It's still got a pretty fair tip to it, but it's got a lot of backbone. Like, for it to be do they call that one a light action?
Extra light is what they call it.
Yeah, it's not an extra light. Like, that's false advertisement, in my opinion. Like, that might be in the Western world of big swim baits and all that stuff, but that is not an ultralight in any way, shape, or form. As far as the Cadence 700. Now, again, that spy bait rod that I was throwing, or what I throw my spy bait on, that panfish and trout rod, that's an ultralight. That's a sporty one to catch a 4 or 5 pound smallmouth on. But that 700, it's one of those rods you really just kind of need to feel it. In my opinion, the what they interpret to be action wise is not what I would agree with, but it is a tremendous rod.
Are you a loop knot guy? JJ wants to know.
I am. I'm a loop knot guy. I spent a ton of time, and there's plenty of arguments. It's funny. Jacob, again, tremendous minnow fisherman, does not tie a loop knot. So it's funny. Like, I am so over analytical about this stuff. I'm super high detail oriented. I rig tackle like 4, 5, 6 hours every night. Like, it's all kind of a whole mental thing for me. And it's funny to see other guys have, just as much success as me. And not that they don't work as hard at it, but they're just like, they don't pay attention to the little details. Yeah, things still make them bite. So kind of hard for me to argue that sometimes, but I still think it matters. A lot of it to me is just building the confidence in myself. Like, I know all my equipment is taken care of. I know I'm prepared. I generally have like 20 or 30 rods rigged, even if I know I'm going to throw 3 or 4, like, just in case I see this. I just kind of, cross my T's, dot my I's, and take care of as many controllable variables as possible. In bass fishing, there aren't very many, so what few there are, I'm going to try to overcompensate on those and handle the uncontrollables as good as you can.
There's definitely different methods for different people. There's the guys that are good enough for the last cast, good enough for the first cast, throw the cover on the boat and crack a latte, and right, that's how they do it. And then there's the people that want to, get in tune with their gear and be organized, and they sleep better knowing they did everything they could, right? So
exactly. And again, I mean, it's just kind of whatever floats your boat and what works best for you. But yeah, it is. It's really funny. It's some of the guys that you would think would be one way aren't, and vice versa. Like, it's been a lot of fun kind of getting to know some of my idols and guys that I've always looked up to, growing up in the bass fishing world. Kind of see them on a more personal level and kind of see the inner them, and they're all great guys, and they're all super fun to be around. But it's kind of funny, like, you'll learn things that you didn't expect from certain people and other things from others, and it's not, very rarely is it ever what you think it was going to be, but certainly fun.
Absolutely. It's an interesting question. So Jim G. Lopez. So obviously, looking at last couple of years, a lot more different conditions with scope. What have you learned that fish are doing when the water gets muddy? Does it change their behavior, or does it not change it as much as we thought it did?
It depends on the body of water, but it does change them. So what the one thing with forward facing that we've learned is just how many. We always knew this happened, but not to the magnitude or the consistency, like times of year that these fish will get out and float and kind of suspend over. Sometimes it's over kind of the abyss out there, and a lot of times they're related to something, a creek channel, a ditch mouth, something along the bottom. However, they're in the top third of the water column, and the mud will change that more so than anything else. Like, those fish really, I mean, again, most of them that are out there's not any cover around. It's really open water. They're sight feeding, to find that bait. And so when they lose their eyesight, again, not that they don't have their lateral lines and they can feel, but it's a silly analogy, but you're in your living room, which you've spent thousands of hours in, I'm sure. And like, I sneak in there as you're walking and I flick all the lights out and it goes pitch black dark. First thing you're going to do is touch and feel around until you find something. As soon as you find whatever that object is, a coffee table, the recliner, whatever it may be, you're now oriented in the room. And because you spent so much time there, you know exactly where you are, even though you can't see anything. I really feel like bass are very much the same, in that when the lights go out, so to speak, it gets muddy, it gets dingy. Their eyesight is no longer kind of the prevailing predatory way to feed. I feel like they like to get on the bottom. They like to get around a piece of cover. A lot of times they'll move a lot shallower. I think that's more based on their food source moves shallower, and they're kind of following along with them. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of changes with not just mud, but water conditions, as a whole. Like, a lot of different changes we see what's actually happening now with forward facing. Sometimes they're there. We always, so like on a high rising lake, say in the summer on TVA. I'm giving out a little gem here, but when we used to think that those fish left offshore, they're out on the river channel, they're doing their summertime deal, schooled up, and the water comes up, call it 6, 8, 10 inches above summer pool. We used to think that those fish left completely, and there were none of them out there. Now, since forward facing, I realized like not all of them. Some of them go shallow. They'll follow the rising water, but a lot of them just sit there. And I can't explain to you why. I don't know if you chunked a live shiner down there that you can make one bite, but when the water comes up, a good portion of those fish stay. They do not bite. Like, you just cannot make one bite. It's unbelievable. I've sat on a school that I've been catching them on, and the water come up just a couple inches, and you cannot make one bite. Sit there for hours and you can't. So it's really, again, forward facing has it's shored a few things up. It's really complicated a lot of other things that we thought were pretty like cut and dry. We knew this is what happened, and it's pretty far from the truth, but really been a lot of fun. To me, that's what's exciting about forward facing, and it's factual information. You are seeing real life, how that fish is set up, why he's set up, how his mood is. Like, you call it a video game, you call it whatever, but I don't care what I'm doing. I want to be the most efficient and the most knowledgeable about whatever that industry is. And forward facing is a hypersonic way to get there. Like, you just cannot learn. I've learned more in the last 3 years with forward than I did in the previous 20. Like, there is factual information that I know to be true. Like, I'll argue it, and I'm not much of I'm pretty non-confrontational, but there are some setting, like tried and true deals now with forward facing and bass behavior that we have now with forward facing kind of confirmed. Like, that's what's going to happen. So really kind of cool. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. I don't think they don't not suspend in dirty water, but I think it's relative to what's normal in that system, right?
Right.
More?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And again, like what I'm talking about is pretty muddy. Like, the muddier it gets, the fewer of them you see out there. And I saw that in an area on Guntersville, where they were, I'm not saying they were everywhere, but there were quite a few of them up roaming around. And we had a barge come through and really stirred it up and jacked the whole kind of area up. And there was not a bass floating anywhere. Like, it was kind of cool how quick it changed. But you'll see that with, like all that red clay that we have coming out of Duck River on the southern end of Kentucky Lake. That mud, when it's like a thick red clay looking mud, it's just not conducive to those fish up roaming around. Again, and this is something that's important to, and I always kind of want to point out. So, like, anything that we talk about, and I say, a bass does this or a bass does that, like, we all have to understand and know that there are outliers in bass, just like there are in people. Like, we're all built a little differently. We all think a little differently. The only thing that I can do, especially on these podcasts when we're talking about questions or having questions about certain topics, is like answer it with the majority and kind of what the majority of the population does. Because I promise y'all, probably every one of you has caught them in muddy water suspended somewhere. Like, I'm not saying that that's not, something that can happen, but it's just not what happens to the majority of the population. So it's kind of the only way I can know to kind of work through some of these questions. We just all have to know that there's going to be exceptions to anything that we say. You just kind of have to go with what the majority of them's doing. So
it's like parenting. There's always exceptions in parenting. So
always
you just gotta
parenting.
Any big spots on Guntersville you come across?
No, I did find a cool little area the last day, championship day, the last period. I used my scope period and found a flat that had a lot of spawning spots on it. Did not catch any real big ones, but it was a lot of fun. If there was an object sticking like 6-8 inches off the bottom, there was 100% going to be one spawning on it, and you caught 100% of them, or at least hooked 100% of them. I lost 3 or 4, but you know, a lot of 2 or 114s, 115s to like 2.4s. I think I had 1 211, but did not catch any big spots or smallmouth. Although I was fishing primarily way up the river in my fishing periods, I was not on the main lake where a lot of those smallmouth and kind of where Wesley and DC and you know, some of those guys were at. So I was kind of utilizing the backwaters up the river and just trying to get away from a lot of the pressure. And those backwaters, to some degree, you can kind of like, you know, there's some in here. It's a fairly consolidated area. That eelgrass, I'll be honest with you, I'm just not a big fan of these big, giant, expansive grass flats with no changes. Like, I'm fine with a grass flat on St. Clair that's 3 miles by 5 miles long, but I won't change in amongst there. Like, I want there to be a reason that I know one's going to be here, a group's going to be here. And that eelgrass is just flat carpet, no change, nothing to really relate to. You just kind of have to get in there and root around and find the little corner, little area that they want to be in. So not something that I really like doing, but it seems like almost every event this year, with the exception of Murray, has kind of been that way. We've been fishing grass or eelgrass lakes all spring. So I'm ready to get somewhere that doesn't have eelgrass, which is not going to be chick and not going to be niggerjack. I'm going to have to deal with it one more event.
Nice. Yeah, I was in Guntersville in 2019, and it on your side imaging, I mean, that was like pre-scope, for the most part, for all practical purposes. And it was amazing, like that. It just like, it would grow this high, like it was just like,
just
and when it would stop, it would just be like, it looked like a fence row, like it was.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You're exactly, but the problem right now is, like, you know, most of these fish want to be really shallow, again, kind of spawn oriented, pre-spawn, post-spawn, kind of immediate post-spawn, but a lot of spawners. And that grass line, that outside eelgrass line, was a lot of times in like 8 to 12 feet of water out there. So like, they really, the only edge that you could really find was too deep. Like, they didn't even really want to be there, you know, when we were here last week. So I'm more of an edge, like high percentage. I don't care whether it's grass or whatever it is. Like, I want to run as much high percentage, you know, stuff, whatever that may be for that given day, as I can. You know, I'm not much of a Mark Davis, like, there's 7 bass in this bay and I'm going to catch 6 of them. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to catch the 2 that are set up where I know a bass should be, and I'm going to go to the next one, see what happens. But it's all just kind of the way I like to fish.
Absolutely. Brian wants to know what's your favorite frog and frog rod.
So I'm a little different, and a lot of guys are gonna, they're gonna make fun of me for this, but so we don't get a chance here on Kentucky Lake or really anywhere that I've been here recently to frog grass and kind of like heavy vegetation. If I do that, I like the Champion XP 734. 735. I'm kind of a shorter rod guy, but my favorite thing to do here on Kentucky Lake, like literally, if you told me I could only do one thing, and like they would always bite it, it would be skipping a frog around wood, you know, buck bushes, cypress trees, willow trees. And I actually like a lighter rod. So my favorite rod for that is a 7. It's a Caden Series 713. So it's honestly, it's my spinnerbait rod, but I like it. It's short. That 7-1. A lot of times, you know, wood, we're not bombing way out there. We're making short little roll casts, skipping it around. And that 713 Caden really loads up good. And I can just a short little easy roll cast, I can get that bait to skip really nicely. And I'm not a great skipper. Like, I'm no Andy Morgan or Montgomery by any means, but that rod really makes it easy for me to skip a frog on. And again, around kind of, isolated wood targets, you don't have to have a giant broomstick of a rod. I really feel like we kind of get a little overly aggressive when frog fishing, and like setting the hook with a telephone pole of a rod. And like, man, the hook, I promise you can lay it on top of your finger and you'll draw blood. Like, it doesn't, and we're throwing it on straight braid. So like, it doesn't take that much pressure. I feel like we create a lot more, negative outcomes from that than good. But it sure is fun to jack one as hard as you can and see what happens. But I really like that 713 for open water, kind of light frogging cover, so to speak. Kind of more what I do probably 90% of the time when I'm throwing a frog. I love throwing it in vegetation, but we just, at least here in the last like 2 years, I don't know that I've caught one out of grass on a frog. It just has not kind of lined up right. But again, when I do, I like that 734 Champion XP. It's kind of the happy medium. It's not a broomstick, but it's still got a little bit of tip. But you hook one that buries up back there, you've still got plenty of rod to work with.
What pound braid are you throwing around the bushes?
So bushes, that's a good question. Bushes, I generally will go pretty heavy, like 65, sometimes even 80. And the only reason that I do that, well, let me back up. So you asked the same question about matted vegetation, and it's 30-pound braid. And like, I'll never go any higher than that. And the reason, none of that has anything to do with like the actual poundage of the breaking strength of that braid. Rope is rope to me. I'm not going to set the hook hard enough, to where I'm ever going to break that. But what happens is when I'm throwing that 30-pound braid around wood is when you set the hook, if you skip it through a bush and like your line's laying over a limb and that fish bites it way back in there, when you set the hook and you create tension, the smaller the diameter, the more that braid cuts into wood, and your line will almost like wedge itself inside of a crack that is now kind of dug into the wood. And you'll lose a lot. Like, you'll be tight the whole time, but you're only tight to that limb. Back behind that, you're wide open and slack line. So the 30-pound braid will, because of the thin diameter, will cut vegetation much better than 60 or 65 or 80-pound braid. But again, vice versa. Like, if I'm fishing wood, I'll go big braid. Want that big diameter to diminish the opportunity for it to kind of cut itself way into a limb. So kind of a two-pronged approach. You can meet it to be simple, and if somebody just had like one frog rod that they kind of wanted to do, with both vegetation and wood, you could go with 50 and kind of meet somewhere in the middle. But if you're really wanting to get specialized about it, 30 for heavy matted vegetation and 65 or even 80 for that heavy wood stuff.
Cool stuff. I knew exactly where you were going when you said it.
Yep.
I don't trust 30. I don't know.
Yeah,
I feel like
everybody makes fun of me.
The rod I use, because I would probably throw it on a 735, I would snap set it and I would occasionally break it.
Yeah.
But because you're using a 3-power rod, I can see how you could get away with it.
Yeah, and I really don't set the hook hard. Like, everybody calls me Paul because I'll just kind of wind into them and just kind of lean back. And like, I tend to, when I slack line hook set, like I used to do that all the time. And what I found is that I was kind of hurting myself, both in putting a tremendous amount of pressure on the fish that generally would open up a big hole in his mouth and leave a lot of room for that hook to move. But also when I slackline, so I'd wind down and I'd slackline him. Well, now my rod is pointed over my shoulder, back behind me, and bowed back around. So to get any more leverage, I've got to wind down and into him, which when you drop that rod, it allows her to turn her head back whichever direction she wants it to go. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll wind down tight and kind of lean back fast and aggressively, but my rod never gets anywhere close to going over my shoulder. And so I've always got good leverage. I never have to drop that rod. And it's almost kind of like a pull hook set. It's a pretty aggressive pull hook set, but I almost feel like I'm if that fish is sideways to me, when I start pulling her, I never give her any room to get turned back around, at least until I get her away from the cover, and then she can kind of do her thing out there. And I take it easier when you can on them. But yeah, I never have a problem, even with 30-pound braid. As long as you retie every couple of days, I don't ever really much have a problem with it.
Sure. There's a couple guys, Nick talking about the 735 Fury, Trevor using about the 735 Maverick. That's the one cool thing about, for me on the Dobyns, like 735 is a popular jig and frog rod, and you can find it in a bunch of different price points, and which is cool.
Absolutely. And I tell you, man, some of them, like, I don't even know how they're pulling that off, because it's like, man, and I hope nobody, like, I don't mean this in any negative way, but it's like, man, this is a good feeling rod for 80. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very well built blank, still got, some really, really strong components on it. I don't know how they build some of those rods for the price points that they have them set at, but certainly proud that they do, and glad that we can offer that.
Yeah, I had a Dobyns, or I had the XP 705 crankbait rod for years, like not the old ones pre that, and I recently got the Fury 705 crankbait rod, and that thing is amazing. I bought a second one, like for $120. It's like,
yep, that's
like for square bills, and yeah. So are you more of like a popping frog, walking frog? Like, you got a favorite frog, or?
Again, it's kind of depends on the scenario, but I would say 85 or 90% of the time I'm a walking frog guy. Although I can, with the right cadence, I can kind of get my walking frog to kind of splash and gurgle. You can kind of get it to walk in place pretty aggressively, and it'll actually throw some water around. So it's a walking frog, but I can get it to kind of almost act like a popping frog if I wanted to.
It'll spit, and
yeah, just kind of throw some water.
Yeah. So are you, Jim's? Are you an anti-Carolina rig guy?
Ooh, I better be getting 3 bites per cast to throw a Carolina rig. No, I honestly, I mean, I throw it when it's a great cleanup bait. It's always a bait. When I know where they're sitting, I'm probably not going to leave without making a few casts with it. Last year, that invitational win at Eufaula, caught several key fish out of those schools, on a Carolina rig, and honestly had an old 8-inch lizard, as the soft plastic on it. So really going old school with that. But I tell you, I had a lot of, I don't want to say a lot, but I had several, let's call it long in the tooth fellas, that actually came up and shook my hand and said, I did not even know somebody your age would know what a lizard was. Like it was kind of a big deal. But yeah, I love catching them on that Carolina rig as long as I know where they are and I'm confident that I'm throwing it around them. I'm telling you, it's embarrassing how fast I have to fish to kind of keep myself content and happy with what's happening. I better get bit pretty quick to throw it, but I'm not, like, I promise you, come June at Kentucky Lake here for that BPT, I'll have one on the front deck. I promise you, you'll see it laying there. I may not make a cast with it one day. I may make 200 casts the next day, but it's always going to be on the deck.
Yeah. Since you brought up lizard, this and your geographic might bring back some memories there.
Holy cow! I hadn't seen one of that. Is that that dragon
The
thing?
hook FLW
Oh,
Walmart
that's the man.
lizard.
Yeah. Okay. Holy, I thought you had the dragon one. I was gonna say,
No,
man,
not the dragon mosquito. This is the FLW, like when they had all their signature baits,
yeah,
right?
I remember
In the
that.
Walmarts. Yeah. I'm sure the Benton, Kentucky Walmart had pegs and pegs full of these back in the day.
I guarantee you they did. I guarantee you. That's hilarious. I hadn't seen one of those packages in forever.
Yeah, back when they said, look for the hook. That was their motto.
That was the catchphrase.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Let's see here. Let's take a quick 1-minute break, and then we'll just maybe come back and talk about like what it's been like getting on the BPT and the format and all that kind of stuff. So
Absolutely.
Are you ready to reel in your next home purchase or refinance? Supreme Lending's Dream Team can help guide you through the entire mortgage process, from pre-qualification to closing. We have a wide variety of home loan programs in our tackle box, including down payment assistance and first-time homebuyer options. You can ask HellaBass. He trusted us to help finance his home. Contact the Dream Team today by searching Supreme Lending Dream Team, or click the link below in the description, or scan the QR code on your screen.
off to mute. There I go. Let's take I always do that. I mute myself there, and then
I was getting worried.
Yeah.
I was like, "Uh-oh, I haven't touched anything."
Like,
what has
I'm
happened?
not ready to take over. Yeah. Shout out to the Dream Team for supporting the channel. And, when you win that BPT on Kentucky Lake and you want to reinvest in a second home, maybe the Dream Team can help you out. So
let's do it. Absolutely. I wish I'd known about them several months ago. I tell you something, a huge shout out to Phoenix. I don't know that I should say this or not, but I'm going to. I don't care. The Phoenix contingency money in the Invitational literally bought the house that I'm sitting in right now. Didn't pay for all of it, but paid for a whole bunch of it. Like way over, almost half, really, of what this house was. So really cool, and can't give a big enough shout out to Phoenix, and always want to support the guys that support us, and they have been very, very strong in kind of the benefits and kind of the packages there, the golds and all that stuff. So really, really cool, and love hanging out with Kurt and Gary and all the crew, Teresa, and been a lot of fun getting to know everybody. So huge shout out to them. That's been a lot of fun here the last couple of years, running a couple different Phoenixes, and I think I found one that I'm going to live with for a while. I last year, 24 season, I ran the XE, 21 XE, and I love the boat, but I just wanted to kind of get a different feel, kind of give myself some options. I've been running that style, or kind of that hull, for the last several years, even when it was the PHX model, and had a couple of those. And so I went with the 921 Elite this year, and man, I don't know that I'll ever go with anything else. It is the perfect mix. Still rides extremely well, but it's got that like sports car feel to it when you're driving it. I just absolutely love the way the boat performs and everything about it. So been a lot of fun.
absolutely. Yeah, we talked about that early, bait man. He wrote a note down.
Do it now.
That Baxter chimed in. He said, "Yeah, we made a note that he'll text you this week, call you back."
Perfect. Thought that
maybe you could meet up at the Toyota the weigh-in on the final day and hang out or something.
Yeah, man, I tell you, that is, if I have, and I don't mean to start this segment of it off, in a rant or a complaint, because this is absolutely what we have to do, and I'm in full support. Do not mean this in a negative way at all, but this off limits right here on
just not putting yourself in a position to
baloney. Like, I'm having to basically just live in this home and not like try to not go anywhere. Don't go to any tackle stores. I feel like I have to call Daniel like 3 times a week, because I'll stop at a gas station somewhere and somebody will tell me a fishing story. And I tell you, it's going to be the most liberating feeling the day after that BPT event here. I have no idea who I'm calling or what we're going to talk about first, but I'm calling somebody, and I'm talking bass fishing on Kentucky Lake for a minute, because it has been almost a year now, about 10 months or so, 9 months, that I've not been able to talk to any of my friends. And it's funny, they'll all call me and go, "Boy, I sure wish I could tell you something. I got some cool, I found something really cool, a whole new pattern," or blah, 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 whatever. And I'm like, man, don't even tell me that you know something when you can't tell me, because I promise by next June, when I'm off, not off limits, you're never going to remember what that was. So, like, don't even tell me. I don't even want to know. It's pretty funny, but we're having a good time with it, making the best of it we can. So, but I'm ready to have my shackles off around the home pond.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. I forgot about that. So, yeah. So speaking of the Bass Pro Tour, right? Had you really fished every fish counts formats before the Bass Pro?
So I did. There was a northern circuit. I'm drawing a blank, looking for that trophy somewhere. I can't remember what they called that, but anyway, um, it was a northern circuit that came down to, I want to say, Chickamauga one year. They did Pickwick 2 years in a row. Gosh, I'm drawing a blank on it. But anyway, it was very similar. Every fish counts format over a certain, weight. And it was all done kind of online. Like, I mean, y'all blasted off, but like all of it was, we didn't have a marshal in the boat. So we all recorded it ourselves and would video. And it was this whole big process, but it was a lot of fun. And really my first introduction to this format and kind of how the game is played on this side. And it was a lot of fun. Pickwick is somewhere I'm familiar with. I have a lot of days spent there, and I very fortunate. I think we finished second or third one year and won it the next. But the format, like I don't want to say we finished second the first year and won it the second, maybe. It was such an adrenaline rush. Like it was me and Chris. I'm drawing a blank on his last name, but anyway, we were going back and forth. Like, it's Tennessee River schools. It's, middle of May, so we're catching them pretty good. And it's like, he'll go up by 10 pounds, and then I'll hit a school and I'll go by 20. And then he'll go up by 15, and then I'll go up by 5. And it was so much fun. And just kind of having that adrenaline dump every single bite. Like, that's what I can't emphasize enough to the viewer. And I know sometimes it's kind of monotonous when we're on a lake that's just got a lot of 1.5 or 2 pounders. And it's not at all that we're trying to only catch those, but when those count, like, you do kind of put that more into your game plan. And it's so hard without somebody ever having fished this format to really understand. You can imagine like a big event and you've got 4, good ones in the box, and you have a dry spell, and all of a sudden you get that 5th bite. Like, that adrenaline dump of, all right, this is the bite we've been waiting on. It may only be a 2-pounder, but it's what's going to fill your limit and kind of make your day. You can call it from there. Like, I can't emphasize enough. Like, it is that adrenaline rush every single time one thumps it. And it's something that you just can't get from a 5-fish format. And obviously there's a lot more strategy to this. So not to take anything away from a traditional 5-fish format, I still love fishing them. Fished a Toyota earlier this year, and we'll certainly fish some more events that are 5-fish. But after you catch, call it an 18 or 20 pound bag that day, and you get a bite, within the first 2 seconds of leaning back into it, that doesn't matter. You just kind of line it in, unhook it, and go on to the next one. Like, there was nothing to that fish. I'll never remember that fish. It's just kind of hard to, you kind of get in a rhythm throughout the day. And I don't know, it's something you're never where you need to be. You're never far enough ahead with this every fish counts format. And the other thing is, like, with a 5-fish deal, really the end game is to find fish and be able to predictably catch them when you need to. In this format, it's just like, that's the start of it. Like, finding and catching bass is so minuscule at this level with the BPT. It's just ratcheted everything else up. And it's honestly, like, now that I'm 4 events in, 3 regular season events and a Red Crest in, it's almost made the act of finding and catching bass, like, I don't want to say second nature, but it's like not even that big a deal anymore. Like, it's like, that's only one small piece of the puzzle. You still got so much more to do, and which period to go do this, and what if the weather plays this way. And it's just, I don't know. I can't explain how many different levels there are to this format that you really kind of almost don't even see or don't even really know about until you kind of live it and a part of it. So really, really fun. And I feel like with every event that I'm learning more about it and like how to be more efficient with it and kind of how to play the game, so to speak.
Absolutely. Is there anything that's surprised you about the Bass Pro Tour so far?
Um, yes, a lot. Like honestly, how nice everybody is. Obviously it was no secret last year. I'm really good friends with John Garrett, and we grew up in Union City together, fished on the junior bass club together, and still really good friends to this day. And like it was no secret that the rookies last year on the Elite Series were not very well liked among the seasoned veterans, and really wasn't very like welcoming. And so that was something that I was a little bit like, I don't want to say nervous about, but I almost kind of expected it. Like I kind of expected some of them to kind of snarl, but man, they have all been really helpful, really great. I've had some probably really stupid questions to them, but I didn't know one way or the other kind of how this all worked out. And so that was something that I guess maybe shouldn't have surprised me, but kind of did. But really just how good everybody is and how much of a strategist that you have to be. Again, I'm kind of re-emphasizing what I just said, but like that was a big surprise to me. Again, in a 5-fish format, you just don't have all of these different levels of kind of strategy behind it. And, you could absolutely have everything you need to even win a BPT event, and you make one mistake, you make one bad stop that cost you even half of one period, and it can ruin your whole week. Like you don't qualify, you don't make it. Like it's so crazy. The level or the opportunity to make a mistake is so big in this, and yet it's so important not to do that. A 5-fish deal or event, that format, you're allowed to make like hundreds of mistakes every day. You only have to make 5 good decisions. Like you've got to generate a lot of good decisions in this to have a good event. So it's really, really fun. And again, it's pushing me. That's what probably I enjoy more than any of it. Obviously there's a lot that I enjoy, but from the fishing standpoint or side of things, getting me out of, my comfort zone and kind of what I had, the pattern or strategy behind how I practiced, I was pretty set in stone. Like I'm always open-minded when it comes to fishing, but how I went about my practices were pretty well the same, regardless of where I went or what time of year it was. So this has definitely changed that. It's kind of pushed me in a different direction, and it keeps me hungry for it. I like change. That sounds weird. Sometimes change is not good, but it pushes you to be better, in whatever it may be, as a person, as a fisherman, whatever it is. Change inevitably forces you to be uncomfortable, which therefore makes you put more time into it, and you're always going to be better because of that.
5-fish tournaments inevitably, like you can find enough in practice, right? You can find too much, like,
Right.
But every fish counts. I don't think there is a too much information,
it's
or too
tough.
much. Yeah,
Correct.
like seeing too much of the lake or seeing any of that kind of stuff.
Especially
Dustin Cannell was literally a couple bites away and not making the knockout round.
Right. And that's
He
what I'm
barely made it into
saying.
the knockout round, and then he ended up,
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Like he was so close to not even having an opportunity to make that happen. And it happens every event. Like a lot of times you don't know which guy it is, but Michael Neal, I certainly don't mean to call him out, but like I had a good first event there at Conroe, and I'm certain that Michael Neal would have had a stellar event, probably made the championship round, had he just scoped in his first period on, I think it was the first day of that event. He chose to fish the first period, scope the second, fish the third. And by the time he got up there in the second period, we were both had found the same area. Didn't know that at the time, but he comes rolling in there at the end of the first period after I'd had a really strong period. And wants to be there to start in his scoping period. And at that point, the weather, the wind had really picked up, and the fish had really kind of pushed to the bottom. He just had
educated
a really
a lot
tough
of them
event.
by that point.
Do I now?
You had educated a lot of that
I had, but man,
population.
there were so many fish in there. Had the weather
I
not
mean,
gotten
but also like you have a
bad,
weather change, and then you've caught whatever, how many
right?
scoreable bass, those all been dropped back in, and now they're mixed in with the other ones, and they
Exactly.
put
But
out
that's
their
what I
pheromones or whatever they do, and
right, right. But that's what I was going back to. Is like Michael making that one decision to scope in the second period instead of the first probably cost him a championship round. Because I assure you, he would have caught him just as good as I did in that area. Like you literally just had to get your minnow over there close to him. So it wasn't like I was doing anything special, had any special bait or anything super dialed in. It was just I decided because of that wind, I wanted to get my scope period out of the way. And hopefully I was really just thinking I might have 30 minutes in the morning before the wind got up. And it worked out. And again, things kind of materialized throughout the week. But it is so minuscule, that room for error there or decision making. A 5-fish deal, if you run 20 miles to an area and it doesn't work out, like that's, I mean, not gonna say it's not a big deal, but it's not the tournament breaker. You do that in this format. First off, you fall in like 3 to 8 spots driving that 20 miles. And if it doesn't happen, you've got to turn around and drive back. That's 3 to 8 more spots you've fallen. So you better have something really juicy when you get to wherever you're driving to. So that's been another thing, kind of surprising to me is like just how quick the leaderboard can go up. Like, man, you can be comfortable all day. Like that knockout round that I had, I was pretty comfortable all day and even almost started practicing a little bit. Just anticipating I would catch a few to kind of keep me above the cut there while practicing. But I mean, in a 5 minutes, 8-minute time, I went from 6-7 pounds ahead to now I'm a couple ounces out of the cut, like real quick. And I only got a couple minutes to make something happen. So it's unique. It's fun. It always keeps you on your toes. And it is definitely the most high intensity or high intense level of professional fishing, like tournament fishing, that I've ever been a part of. It's going to be hard for me to do much anything else.
So I guess try to rewind back when they announced, like I forget, did you qualify before they announced the technology rules or about the same? I don't remember. But put yourself back
No.
to like when they announced the 1 period, 2 no periods, what you thought it would be like versus what it's been like.
So I was nervous. I was excited about the format change simply because it was, whether I like it or not, it was pretty evident that we need to do something to keep the entertainment level up. Like from a fishing standpoint, I can give you, I can chunk your keys out into my yard out here in the dark, pitch black dark, and I can make you go find them in the pitch black dark, or I can give you a flashlight. And like, although in this situation, it would be way more entertaining to watch you wander around out there in the dark. That's what we're doing without forward facing. And like, it's kind of this catch-22. Like we need it to be entertaining. We need to create and build a product that's fun to watch. And we all know that as fishermen, that maybe whether it's forward facing or just like what I'd call an old school smallmouth tournament, you're out in the middle of the lake, 2D'ing, or randomly casting out in the middle of Anchor Bay or somewhere in St. Clair, blind. Like, it's kind of boring to watch. There's nothing to really see. It's kind of mundane, same deal going on. But from a tournament, like a competitor standpoint, there's just simply no way to outfish that scope right now. It's just too efficient. We can put our bait around too many of them. So I was glad to see that from a viewership standpoint, I felt pretty confident that this would be a good kind of option. Maybe not the best, but it was a good option from other decisions that we could have done. But I guess to answer your question, I wasn't certain how much scope would actually play in that 2.5 hour period. Like, if I was being honest, I would have rather, like back then, I would have rather seen it go 4 periods, shorten our periods, but have 4 periods, half scope, half non-scope, just to give you a little wiggle room with your scoping period. If you make one bad call, one bad decision, it really messes up that whole entire period, and you just don't have enough time to rebound. But again, kind of now 4 events in, like, man, it's amazing what we can pull off in 2.5 hours. And if they gave it, I don't even want to say this publicly because they'll throw it back in my face when I argue this at some point. But like, if they gave it to us for half the time, we'd sure run away with a couple of these things. Like, you could not fish fast enough and cover enough fishable water that to compete with us if we had a half a day. So it's been really fun, and scope has really played way more heavily than what I anticipated just in that 2.5 hour window. Like, Drew, myself, Wheeler's had a couple good scope periods. There have been several guys that have had some really big scope periods, and it kind of shows, like, when everything goes right, you can knock their lights out, and you don't need that much time to do it in. So that's probably been one of the biggest shockers. Just differences, things that I was not anticipating. And also, it's all going to depend on the fishery and how that fishery is set up for the time that we're there. Conroe was one of those that, like, if you didn't have a scoping deal playing, man, you couldn't compete. Like, there was just not enough fish up to be caught fishing. And it did kind of materialize throughout the week. But I'm here to tell you, there wasn't a guy in that field that wasn't worried to death about getting a bite in his fishing periods in practice. Like, you just hardly couldn't get a bite. And fortunately, it got a little bit better every day. More and more, we kind of roll into that grass. But we've not had a great setup as far as fishing. I mean, you could kind of argue Harris, the guys that were somehow smart enough to go to the Dead Sea down there in Apopka, or what we were told was the Dead Sea. That was pretty good fishing, but man, there was a whole lot of that lake that was no good. And I don't know if y'all paid attention, but I would have never caught a bass there, I can assure you, because I would have never fished my Cinco that slow. So it's like, we've just not landed on, as good as Guntersville looked and seemed, like, that could have been so much better. A couple weeks earlier, a couple weeks later, kind of get us out of that spawn window where you could get out there and trap and chatterbait and throw a swimmer and that sort of thing, not have to kind of plink around with a Cinco and catch them. So I still don't think that we've seen the full potential kind of the layout here. We've yet to have what I would call a strong fishing period type of tournament where, maybe the scope didn't play at all, or just the fishing bite was that good that that was really kind of the thing you needed to go do. So always going to be some stuff to learn with this, but been a lot of fun, and I've certainly learned. Gosh, I think I feel like I've learned a decade's worth in just a couple months here. So really looking forward to continuing the season.
Yeah. I don't know. Mark Davis would disagree that, that was the wide open bite dragging the Senko. So, but I guess that's.
Yeah, it's wide open for him. But, buddy, I'm telling you. So I was driving home. I made a bad call in that event, went to Griffin the first day, really kind of sunk my ship. I righted it on the second day, but was just a couple pounds shy of getting into the knockout round. Just dug myself too big a hole. So for the first time ever, in any Toyota series, any invitational, I did not make the final day, which was a really, really kind of weird feeling for me. I'm driving home watching live, and I'm not kidding you. And I'm sure most people listening to this remember, he pulled up on one little point of reeds there and caught like 9 or 10 in a row, almost on consecutive casts. I'm not kidding you. He sat there, wrapped her down for 30 miles of me driving on the interstate to catch those 10 bass, and never moved his boat. Like, I just can't do that. Like, I might have caught 5 of those bass, and it would have been in 3 passes down that bank right there. Like, I would have never checked up off that trolling motor. I promise you, I know what I would have done.
Nice.
So it's always, it's about learning, and that, like, I know you've got to fish slow in Florida, and I know you kind of got to do the Florida deal, but my gracious, like, I'd almost just rather not catch them than to fish that slow. That sounds silly, but I just don't know if I can make myself do it.
So it really kind of like, do you think we're going to see any of the scenarios the rest of the year where the first period, scope is not the default? Like it almost seems like now, based on what we're seeing, like you better have a really good reason, and you almost got to convince yourself or come up with a scenario to not do it the first period. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there could be potential, like Potomac River, is one that, depending on the tide, like when the
Mhm.
tide, and I don't know anything about the Potomac. I don't know if it's. I'm assuming like any tidal fishery, when it's a low tide, like it's going to push them all out into some area where we should be able to see them pretty good. High tide, they're going to kind of scatter up on top of these flats, and so I could see, depending on the timing of that low tide in that Potomac tournament, you could see it play there, maybe in the second or third periods. But yeah, it's kind of one of those things. I didn't know how that would play, like that we would all end up doing it the first period. I've not done that. Like I'm trying to forget about what everybody else is doing and just make the call based on what I think the fish that I found are doing. And like every
Mhm.
event, it seems like it's a morning deal. I don't know why, but it just seems like, excuse me, like at Murray, there were no herring in these little ditches or kind of troughs where I was catching them, just like Gil was. We kind of both seemed to be on the same bite. I think Wheeler was as well, but his was kind of up the river. It was a lot dingier. Kind of, they acted different up there. Uh, but ours were from daylight until 9 o'clock. But buddy, I am telling you, at 9 o'clock on the dot, you might as well put it up. We've still got an hour and 15 minutes left, but you could not do that thread fin, chasing roamers around like at 9:01, you weren't going to catch one. And it was really kind of frustrating, but fortunate that we got enough of the right clues to know that going into the event. Like it was pretty evident. You could catch them pretty well till about 9 o'clock, and then it was over. You better go do something else. So again, it just kind of made sense strategically. All those fish under those docks, let the sun get up, go do your scoping deal with low light conditions when those fish should be more loose on the docks. Let the sun get high while you're scoping, and then go kind of finish out the day being, man, you're basically catfishing under those docks at Murray is what we were doing. It was the wildest thing, and this was kind of a side story, but I'll make it quick. Learning forward facing or utilizing forward facing even in your periods that you're not allowed to in the tournament. And what I mean by that is, in practice, obviously we have scope all day. And so even when I'm up fishing shallow, it's not like I turn it off. It's still on. I might see something that I can learn from. And so as I'm fishing these docks, I'm skipping my little Nico Rama under there and little Sensei worm. And it was pretty evident pretty quick that like a Nico worm was the deal. And you notice like almost everybody was doing the same exact thing by the end of the tournament. We all, the guys that made the championship round, all kind of came to the same conclusion. But what I learned is, in practice, very quickly you would notice you would throw your worm beside a fish. You didn't ever want to land it right on him, but you'd land it over here next to him. He would swim over and nose up and stare at the worm, level back out. He'd turn around, swim back to wherever he originally came from. Mind you, like, you can't move your bait. It's still sitting exactly where it landed. Most of the time they would turn immediately around and go back, nose back down. The second or third time they did that is when they bit it almost every time. Like, out of however many bass I caught, only one or two bit it either on the initial fall or as soon as it hit the bottom. Most of them, even though I couldn't look, like based on what they had been doing in practice, I know they were going over there and nosing down, going back to kind of home base, turning around, swimming back over, nosing down on your worm. You just had to be incredibly patient with it. And that was an event that forward facing, even though I wasn't using it around those docks, it really helped me to slow down and give myself confidence of like, I was believing that one was sitting there nosing down on the worm. It was the only way I could make it sit there long enough, because it was weird. If you ever like drug the worm, even to like if you pulled too much tension to check to see if he had it and you'd pull it away from it, he'd never bite it. Like, it was the wildest thing. That's another reason you saw Marshall Robinson and Drew winning the event. having two really, really good events is because they would leave their worm under there even longer than I would. I mean, they'd leave it there for Marshall was sometimes leaving it 2 or 3 minutes under there without touching it. So again, those were all things that I would have pretty well guarantee I would have never learned.
Based on what you said earlier, you would have never caught any of those bass.
No, you'd never leave it there without moving it. I mean, again, but that's all just kind of part of the strategy of like, even though I can't utilize it up here, I've already used it today, but I know what's happening. So you just kind of have to envision what you would be looking at on your graph and just kind of know that that's what's happening out there. And every now and then you get a thump and it starts swimming out of the dock. So, it was good enough for I don't even know, 7th, 8th, wherever we finished in that event, top 10. So,
yeah, and I think you're tied for 5th in the points right now
I
after the
think
first
so.
3 events. Yeah,
I think so. Mm-hmm.
So,
and
you
very
got
fortunate again. Harris Jane was really kind of our only hiccup, and I feel good about that event. It's one of those with multiple lakes in play, you have to kind of make a decision where you feel most confident, and that was not the right call one day. So feel good. We rebounded, had a really solid, second qualifying day. We were just a little short. Actually, both at funny how this all worked because of the 2-pounder that happened there at Guntersville and Red Crest, both at Harris Chain and at Murray. I may get these backwards, but I want to say at Harris Chain, I had 13 seconds left in the third period. In Murray, I had 8 seconds left in the third period before lines out, and I get a bite in both events on the last cast in the last 15 seconds of the event. Of course, I get neither one in. The one at Harris Chain was actually the biggest bass that I caught all week, like even in practice, which was not impressive. It was only like a 313 or something, but still would have helped me, for my heavy hitters and that sort of thing. But really funny, like, how many casts do you make during the course of a tournament day? And 2 tournaments in a row in the last 15 seconds, that's when I get a bite. So it's just kind of one of those deals. And then again, it all kind of came full circle. I asked for one and was given one this past week, so it worked out. Got it back a little.
And then for the people playing Major League Fishing, fancy fishing, do we got 2 TVA lakes coming up?
We do. Actually, technically 3. So we have the next event here in a couple of weeks, call it 2.5 weeks, is Chickamauga for the first 2 qualifying days, and then the knockout and championship round are on Nickajack. And then the following BPT event will be on Kentucky Lake here first week of June. So kind of got three TVA lakes in 2 events.
Sure. So Jake might not be the worst pick on those. Just heads up for fantasy players.
I try to be pretty humble, but for the first time all year so far, I feel pretty confident, pretty comfortable going into it. We're going to catch what bites and see where it puts us. But at least I feel like coming into this event, I'm not like totally blind.
Where the boat ramps are, right? I mean, we don't got to figure out where the boat ramps are. You know where you're going to get gas.
That's right.
I mean, things like
That's
that,
right?
Like,
yep. Yeah, and again, I don't have a ton of experience on Chick and virtually almost none on Nickajack, but they all fish fairly similar, and TVA's kind of, once you understand it, I assume it's like Florida. Once you finally get that, once you crack that nut down there, you kind of understand all of those lakes. But I've not done that yet there in Florida. That's kind of been my nemesis. Any vast grass lake like that is always a challenge for me. I just don't like those lakes, and I like edges and corners, high percentage places, and Florida is not one of those. So, but I like my chances here for the next couple of events. I'm really looking forward to getting over to Chickamauga. It's been a lot of great big ones caught over there, and that's one thing that we've lacked this year is, there's been several 7s, several 8s, and maybe a 9 or 2. But we've yet to hit one of these events where, we hit it kind of right, where the big ones are pulling up or maybe they're all headed out to school up. We've just not hit one right on the money yet this year. So we're due for a really strong, like, big showing. Everything's we've made it look a lot easier than what the fishing has actually been, I guess is what I'm trying to say, previous couple events.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, mainstream fishing. Thanks for checking in. Been a member for a while. Appreciate that, and all the members on the channel. I do want to shout out one thing here. So I am running some auctions for St. Jude's for the Dick Hiley fundraiser coming up here at the end of the month. So I'll drop a link here in the chat for people. But there's some Tacklecraft customs up here, and I got some other things loading up on the site as well. So if people want to support St. Jude's, support that. I got some old school books, some things like that, but there'll be a lot more stuff. This is just kind of the tip of the iceberg here. So just want to throw that out there. I do have this box from DC Swim Baits here, and I'll probably get these loaded up. Some swim baits. There'll be a lot more cool stuff coming. It's a good cause. St. Jude does a lot of great stuff. So So you're fishing a couple Toyotas. You're fishing the BPT. Is that your full schedule for the year, pretty much? Are you trying to make the Toyota Championship, or?
I'm not so much worried about the championship. I'm going to fish the Invitational on Pickwick here, and actually, it's practice starts the day after the Chickamauga Nickajack event. So we'll kind of rush over there that night and get ready to start practice the next couple of days for that. But yeah, besides the team events, this fall, I really wanted to focus very heavily on the Bass Pro Tour this year, and it's quite a workload in itself. But I wanted to really put my focus on that, really try to understand and gain as much knowledge about this format and kind of the strategy behind it. And then kind of next year, we'll see, what we want to do. I'm certainly a lot more comfortable, even just 4 events in now, kind of knowing what to expect and what I need to do and kind of how to go about, being competitive here. So I'm more comfortable fishing, some other events next year, but this first year, I really just kind of wanted to make sure I was giving myself an adequate amount of time to kind of reflect after each event and prepare for the next one. It's pretty easy to get, like, at least for me, to get super hyper focused on the next event. And like a lot of times I won't reflect a whole lot on what just happened because I'm driving to the next one, and you just don't have time to kind of decompress from that event and figure out what you did right, what you did wrong, and kind of analyze really the week as a whole. So we've done that this year, and again, I think next year we'll probably open the books up to fishing some more. But this year has been a good learning experience.
Well, if you wouldn't make so many final days, you'd have more time to think.
Hey, I'm never going to complain about that.
Well, we are mixing in a couple Toyotas and Invitationals to make sure you get your chance at those Phoenix rewards, right? So
absolutely can't pass that up.
Let's take a. So here's some sneak peeks of some swim baits from DC there. Here's one, maybe more. Let me go finish this here. Here's maybe one more Jake style for some gizzard shad looking.
Absolutely.
But so some of these will be in some future stream giveaways for later this month, and then some of these will end up on the eBay site. So just a little sneak peek of what's coming. Be more baits, more opportunities for people to contribute, and we'll have a little something for everybody to raise money for St. Jude's here. So, but what else? Let's see here. We talked about a lot. So I think we talked about the Yamamoto Minnow. So it sounds like we'll learn some of those secrets maybe close to ICAST. Is that?
Yeah. We should be ready to rock. So we're like 50% of the way through without getting too detailed. We're really we kind of wanted to be able to release the entire line of minnows instead of just kind of one here and another one a couple months later. I wanted to have when we release this, I wanted it to be what we needed from top to bottom, whether we're chasing smallmouth up north, chasing big giant largemouth in Florida. Like they're all little. The cool thing with the minnow techniques and kind of jig-headed minnow is, to someone that has never fished it or doesn't, have a ton of time behind it, like you think, oh, you just tie on a minnow and you sling it out there in front of him and he eats it every time. And like that is really not the case. This is as fickle of a bait as any I've ever seen. They get a ton of time to investigate and look at the bait because it's oftentimes not moving very fast. So they've got plenty of time to check it out and kind of critique what you've got there. If you don't have exactly what it is that they're wanting, whatever's triggering them in that particular body of water, or that particular time of the year, your bite percentage goes down a lot. So we're trying to really cater to have, all of the offerings from the get-go and kind of all different shapes and sizes of what fits kind of our bait fish needs. So really looking forward. Like I say, we've got about half of the lineup pretty well ready to rock, and got to do some final like colors, stuff. But as far as the bait itself, it is doing and acting just the way that I want it to, and I'm really excited about it. We should be ready to rock on the others here really soon. Should be fresh out at ICAST this year.
Sure. JJ wants to know, is there any like nuggets or anything you do slightly different for the different species of smallmouth spots that you like?
Yeah, so this is something that is pretty black and white, pretty consistent, I guess. Word I'm looking for is the cleaner the water, the faster you want to move your minnow. And again, a lot of that I think comes back to just them being able to investigate it and kind of critique the bait. The faster it's moving, the more of a somewhat of a reaction. It's not a true reaction bite. They've got time to say no for sure, but it definitely, they have to make that decision and really make a hard push for it. And big, like that's probably, when talking about fishing for primarily largemouth, but even smallmouth on TVA, these things like a big minnow. And that's something that, I'll be honest with you, kind of held that back for a little while. It's something that nobody was really doing much there for a couple of years, and I kind of capitalized when I had the opportunity. But we might as well talk about it and kind of let the cat out of the bag and kind of get everybody in on it while the getting's good. And it's all based on what your body of water has to offer as far as bait fish. If you've got big gizzards, if you've got drum in there, big bait fish, big things that they can eat, you're oftentimes going to get them to trigger on a bigger minnow. That seems elementary, but it's that 7-inch minnow, 6, 7, even an 8-inch minnow is not as big as a lot of the stuff that they eat here on the TVA and a lot of other bodies of water as well. So it's kind of one of those deals. If you want to, just go in there, bud. So it's, smallmouth wise, it kind of goes in tandem with kind of the sight, the cleaner the water, the faster I want it to move. But it almost kind of seems the opposite with a smallmouth. Like I tend to go really small with a smallmouth. Again, I will say that's excluding TVA smallmouth, because those things, they eat big baits. And you'll even see, like, I can tell you if it's a TVA smallmouth just by looking at the picture, because their mouths are traditionally significantly bigger than a northern smallmouth. Now, that fish may have come from Dale Hollow, but even those smallmouth don't look quite the same as TVA. They kind of have a certain build to them here. And I think a lot of it's just they've adapted to eat bigger baits here, and bigger bait fish. So that's definitely one of them. But size of the minnow and the weight of the head, therefore the speed of your minnow is probably the two most important factors.
So in cleaner water, you tend to go a little heavier to keep it
a little
moving
heavier
quicker,
to get it to go faster, kind of scurry across them really quick. Again, you There are multitudes of ways, of different ways to get to the same, the same concept. We can use the same size jig head and go smaller with our bait, which is less water resistance. You're going to get it to move faster. It's all kind of fly by the seat of your pants to some degree. You just kind of have to throw one offering to them, kind of see what that fish does, how he reacts. The faster they come at your bait, the more that, like smallmouth in particular, the more they swirl around your bait and kind of figure eight all over it before they eat it, the more excited he is. A largemouth, he's just like, if he's really excited, he's really going to kind of surge up there to it. But the slower they come, like if they're just moping up there at your bait, most of the time they won't bite it. And they're for sure not real excited about it, or they just shot up there. So those are all ways to very quickly, even in the very first cast with any bait, not just a minnow, but you can kind of gauge their mood and kind of how much they like this bait or how little they like it. I've even had it where you throw something real finessey, like small. I'm not talking something big like spooky, but they'll actually swim away from it. Like, we don't, we're not having that today kind of deal. So it's, again, all these things with forward facing, these were all the same decisions that we were making on a whim, back in the day, like just basically a slight educated guess. We haven't gotten bit on a glide bait in 4 hours. Like, we probably ought to go do something else. Well, I could have told you they weren't going to bite a glide in like 15 minutes, that same exact day in the same place, with scope. So let me throw it by 2 or 3 of them, and I can pretty well tell you what's going to happen. But, that the minnow deal is it seems like once you figure it out, wherever you go in that particular body of water, at least for that day, like, it's pretty consistent. I don't really understand that. But when you figure out what a bass likes on this end of the lake, you can pretty well drive to the other end and the same fish will like it. Like, it's kind of an odd deal, but you can absolutely, there's usually, with a minnow game, there is a pattern within the pattern. Like, you're not just throwing a minnow. There's always more to it.
Things I needed to know on the St. Clair Bassmaster Open in July last year.
Yeah.
That I didn't know. I just kept throwing the same minnow at the same fish and watching them not eat it all day. So clearly I could have made an adjustment and probably had a much better day too.
Absolutely.
But so when do you like a Nico versus a jig head minnow? Like, is there a season? Is it just a day by day thing, or there's some generalities that time of year?
Yeah, I would say like, not talking the time of year in general, it's how he's related and where he's related to. If he's pretty close to the bottom, if he's sitting pretty tight to a piece of cover, again, it all kind of goes back to the trial and error. I'm going to throw it by, throw my Nico rig by a few, and then I'm going to throw a minnow by a few, kind of see how they react. But the closer they are to the bottom, the more that I will, throw that Nico and kind of lean towards that. Something, although I will say something sneaky that I probably shouldn't let out and talk about too much. But Father Gill did it a little bit. He talked about it a little bit at the Classic, winning the Classic this way. We're throwing a Nico rig on those fish that are getting heavily pressured by a minnow and swimming your little worm over the top of them, suspended way up there, nowhere close to the bottom, never intending to let my worm get to the bottom. Fishing it very similar to your minnow. You keep it up above them and just kind of swim that thing across them. And it's just a different look. It's something that a little more natural, something that they haven't seen in these lakes that the minnow fishing has got really popular. So it can be thrown in both, but again, like springtime, we're getting around the spawn. You're going to lean more towards the Nico, but I have seen exceptions kind of all over the board. But generally speaking, the tighter he is to a piece of cover or the bottom, the more I'm going to throw that Nico. The more loose or the further away he is, the more I'm going to throw the minnow. But as anything, there's always exceptions to it all. So
let's maybe bring it back to the traditional. Everybody loves a chatterbait, or most people do.
Mhm.
What's your ideal chatterbait setup? Like, what do you like to throw for rods? Because you have different rod choices than a lot of us. So I'm interested to hear
Yep.
what your
Yeah.
go-to for
So
chatterbait is.
I just started messing with the glass rods for the chatterbait. I know I got I want to say it's like a 704 glass XP. I think the one that I decided that I liked was maybe the 736 glass rod. Does that sound right? 735 or 736.
I think those
And
are
I
real rods. Yes,
do I know?
those are rods. Yep, they
Yep.
exist. Yep.
Yep. It's I want to say it's a 736. It's a fairly stiff. Like it surprised me. How stiff that rod was to be a fiberglass rod, and I do like it, but I have just always been a composite guy. I like to feel. I like. I just like the way the rod loads up and how it
Mhm.
fights a fish. So I have it, and again, this is all just depending on. I'm never like this is all I throw and the only way I'll do it. But my favorite like open water chatterbaiting, which is what I do a whole lot, is a 705 CB Champion XP, which is a really limber rod. It's composite, so I've still got a lot of feel to it, but it's it's more whippy. It's gonna load up when they eat it. And I really just feel like it allows them to get it. They don't feel me, and I don't feel them quite as quick. So it's kind of this mutual deal between us. But that's just not a great ride when you're in, whether it be submerged vegetation or even around heavy docks, like a dock with a lot of post on it. Something that you need to be able to take control of the fish. And I actually, on the final day of Red Crest, I had to make that swap to a chatterbait. I put a swimming Cinco on the back to get that bait to ride real high. I was throwing it a 3/8 jackhammer, like 6-7 inches deep. Obviously,
Yeah.
it was a lot deeper than that, but that's where I was needing to keep my bait. So that swim Cinco was a great way to help float that bait up. But I actually had to go to, because that grass was so thick in there, I had to go to a 733 with 20 fluoro, and that 20 fluoro would help, kind of float it up there. And I say float, it's line resistance or water resistance with that big diameter line. But that 733 was just enough tip to seem like they would get it a little bit, but yet I had a ton of backbone to really rip that thing free, because it would bury up, and it's about half your cast you really weren't efficient. You had something on your bait, and that's kind of what I went with that last day. I honestly fooled around there, and through, let's see, I started it on, I just had literally pulled it out of my box. Hadn't been throwing it since practice. Had it on the 705. I caught one on my first cast, like a 211. Lost one on my second cast, and knew immediately. I'm like, this is way not enough rod. Like this, and I knew that, but I just got him all buried up. I couldn't do anything with him, so I tied it on a 713 Caden with straight 30-pound braid, and it was like that was too much direct connection with the bait. Because those fish were spawning, they were coming up there and just kind of slapping at it, eating it in a defensive mode, not really a feeding mode. And so I wouldn't hook them, or I'd lose them halfway back to the boat. And I lost like 3 or 4 before I finally swapped over to that 733 XP, and that was that seemed to be the highest catch percentage per bites. It seemed to work better than most of them. But again, I'm always curious, like what's your favorite one? Because I'm always learning and always looking forward to kind of trying new rods and seeing what works for everybody else.
I guess so. Preface: most of my chatterbaiting is grass, right? Being
Yep.
Minnesota, right? So
Yep.
so I like a graphite rod because I want to feel when there's grass on it. I want to be able to rip it
Yep.
free. Like, so I avoid the glass rods like the plague for fishing up here. I just don't.
Yep.
I don't jive with the glass rods.
Yep.
So for me, a Sierra 734 is my rod of choice. And then I'll sometimes, depending like how shallow I want to fish it, if I, coming around woods, I'll sometimes go fluoro, sometimes I'll go big game, like give it more stretch to the line.
More
So I'll
stretch,
adjust sometimes some things like that. So I'm in the Sierra 734 camp for my chatterbait rod.
Yeah, so pretty similar. And again, I will say that 733 was it was just about the right rod. Like I could see how that 734, I wouldn't have to rip it quite as hard. I might be able to get that bait to come free, a little bit better. Again, for anybody that's not familiar, a 733 or a 734, what we're talking about there in the Dobyns line is the first two numbers, the 7 or 73 is representing the length in foot and inches. So it's 7 foot 3 inches. And it's like the one that I was throwing is a 3 power. It's kind of like a medium, but that's really kind of like a medium heavy. It's not what I would call a medium power rod. And the 4 power is kind of a medium heavy to a light action heavy again, that's the cool thing. Like everybody from rod manufacturer to manufacturer, what they call a medium heavy is generally not what the next person calls a medium heavy. So it's all kind of based on what your, kind of range of comfort is. But that's what all these numbers that we keep spitting out. That's what it is. It's the length in foot and inches, and then the power of the rod is the last digit there.
And the Sierra is a little more moderate, so it's probably like in a champion, it would be like a 733.5.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like
right.
Yeah. Although the 734 champion is a moderate rod, so I mean, But anyways, it's there's some intricacies within the models for sure.
Absolutely.
Which I did throw the code up for Omnia. So if you're intrigued with any of the Yamamoto baits that Jake talked about, or some of the rods got you thinking about some techniques or some different applications, or you found Jake to be your spirit animal and always wondered why I talked about such heavy rods, and you were always more of a lighter rod person, then maybe Jake's got some. You're thinking about some rods to explore, you can check them out on Omnia and use the code to save 15%. So, but I enjoyed it. It was a good time. Like time flew by. We're already over 2 hours just talking fishing, Jake. It was a ton of fun.
Absolutely.
So you got a little bit of time here, and then on the TVA, Nickajack, Chickamauga. We'll see you back in action, trying to see if you can, make a run at Wheeler, which is also he's no stranger to the TVA either. I don't think
he's not.
You're actually going to his home pond for the next one, aren't you?
I was fixing to say we're going to his stomping grounds this go around, and then he's going to come over here and get a dose of me in my stomping grounds. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's a great time of year. Chickamauga is going to be kind of that. Much of what Guntersville was, like it's going to be a fun tournament because there's going to be a lot of different things in play. There's going to be some pre-spawners, mostly spawners, some post-spawners, a pretty good mix of both or all of the three. And, Nickajack is kind of that question mark. Like the majority of the field doesn't know a tremendous amount about it. I went over there and rode around for a day after Murray just to kind of get a feel and a taste for it. And, it's got a ton of fish in it, but it's awfully small. Let me tell you. It's again, we're only going to have, 20 guys the first day and 10 guys or 19 guys one day and 10 the next. So it's certainly going to hold us, but man, as far as like, I don't think it's going to be a pattern lake. It's just not a big enough lake to run a pattern. There's not that much water on it. So it'll be a really interesting tournament and fun, but it's going to be one of those events like Chickamauga. It's 2 events in one. Chickamauga is its own event to get you through or to the knockout round, and then you've got a whole nother tournament starting over there at Nickajack, and obviously a whole new batch of fish, and kind of got to refigure everything out. So be a lot of strategy in this one.
Figure out how you keep Wesley Strader from making it out of the knockout round or out of the qualifying rounds.
Absolutely.
Right on. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on, Jake. Appreciate your time. It's always fun talking Dobyns with somebody else that geeks out on it. And look forward to following you the rest of the season.
Thank you very much. And man, holler at me anytime. I'd love to come on and let's talk fishing anytime.
All right, I'm gonna let you go, and I'll probably wrap up the show here a little bit. Have a good evening, and look forward to following along.
You as well. Thank you, bud.
All right, there's Jake Lawrence. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Yeah, so next week I don't have a guest, but we should be on. I don't have travel Wednesday. We might be changing the nights next week. I'm going to probably be in California next week for Wednesday night. But yeah, so we'll call out. There's a couple more tackle craft. The DT6s just went live tonight on the eBay page. So there's 3 sets of Tacklecraft customs up there and some other stuff. We got more stuff coming, so remind you to check those out. And then I already have it scheduled for the 23rd, so in 2 weeks. Dane will be coming back on the show. We're gonna kind of have like a live streamathon for St. Jude's. Going to be asking for, I think maybe a $10 donation to get in the drawings, and I'm going to have, between Dane and I, probably 10 to 20 drawings that night for different things, from crankbaits, custom painted stuff, arsenal kits, Bass Tech jigs, maybe some Strike Force attractant, some maybe gift cards to Omnia. Like, there'll be, I don't know, let's say 15, 20 prizes where you'll more than double your donation if you win, and then some. So if you can make it, 23rd, we're gonna have some fun. I'm gonna try to get some guests on as well that night to kind of bop in, make it fun. So that's kind of what's coming up here in the next couple of weeks. So appreciate the support we've already got, and hopefully we can have a strong finish for the St. Jude's fundraiser. Looking forward to it, and then we'll be in tournament season, filming and doing content for the St. Jude. That'll be the first tournament and the first video of the year for the tournaments. So, yeah. Reminder: Elite Series event starts tomorrow. Get your fantasy fishing lineups in. You got about 8 hours, 10 hours to get them in. Ray said he liked my picks. He's going with Cox, Corey Johnson, Brandon Card, Drew Benton, and Hamner. So, yeah, it should be a fun event on the Chowan River, the Albemarle Sound, and the Pasquatunk River. Lots of cool stuff. So live should be fun tomorrow. Should be a lot of variety. I think on the I think we'll see cypress trees, we'll see shallow vegetation, we'll see all kinds of cool stuff on Bassmaster Live this weekend. I did get the boat out, so the boat's running good. I accidentally caught a few bass fishing for crappies and bluegills. Might go down to the river this weekend and actually fish for bass for real. Do some scouting for the St. Jude. Yeah. You guys, I got off to a bad start, but the classic was pretty good. So looking forward to reeling you guys back in the Beat HellaBass group. Several people have won their Omnia Pro prizes for winning events, so that's still up there. But yeah, more to come. Thanks everybody that tuned in. Wrap this up. As always, here to help you guys catch more big bass and suck less. He's got a promo going. Yeah, I don't know. We could ask him. I don't know if he's going to give away some tattoo time in our streamathon, but I know he's doing a thing where if you do a donation for $99 and write in that you want, then he's doing a drawing for 4 hours of tattoo time. So, but yeah. Don't know. We can definitely ask Dane, and maybe next time I talk to him, we'll see if he wants to do any promo for Visor Gang. But we'll wrap it up. Thanks, everybody. Be good. And yeah, I guess watch your notifications next week. See when we'll get a stream in, but I'm not sure. It might be Friday night next week, if I had to guess. So, later.